Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us with EA Zoom meetings today. I'd like to welcome a new speaker we have, Verena Borell, as she's going to discuss how to live, love, and work with the Venus cycle.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy that I'm here. I want to share my screen and show you my presentation. So, can you see that?
Beautiful.
Okay, so we start the presentation. Live, love, and work with the Venus cycle. And because I'm here for the first time, first of all, I'm so grateful that you are here, that I am allowed to be here. And I'm Verena Borell. I live and work as an evolutionary astrologer in Munich, Germany. And I offer evolutionary astrology readings in German and English language. And I consider myself as an eternal student. So I really like to not only learn, but also to share my learnings and experiences with others. This talk is based on and influenced by my own experiences with Venus and my observations with my clients, but also by classes, workshops, and the wisdom of my teachers, Sabrina Monarch and Ari Moshe-Wolf. I highly recommend Ari's Venus Retrograde workshop. It's available, I think, on his website. I also read the Pluto Volume 2 book by Jeffrey Wolf Green to prepare myself for this Venus talk, and The Light of Venus by Adam Gainsbourg. And I watched, of course, several videos on the EA Zoom YouTube channel about Venus. I'm also influenced by teachings by Sasha Rose from Venus Wisdom and several podcasts, such as the Venus episode of the Astrology podcast and many others. Because maybe you recognize that when you look for Venus, she's everywhere. So just a quick overview. First of all, I want to talk about basic knowledge about Venus, her archetype, and Venus and the moon. Then we want to have a little dive into the mythology. I will tell you about Inanna and her journey to the underworld. Then we go to the astrology and I talk about the different Venus phases and how we can use them for our own soul's evolution. And then I will talk about the current Venus cycle in Capricorn and Venus meetings and dates with Pluto and Mars. So why Venus now? Why is Venus important at the moment? I mean, she's always important, but at the moment especially, because Venus is the ruling planet of the North Node in Taurus. And therefore, Venus and her cycle are important for our evolutionary journey and a key to find more joy, grace, and self-worth, and peace within transformation. First of all, I want to say that when I talk about Venus and the feminine principle, I always talk about her as the feminine principle, which is omnipresent and independent from the biological gender. That's very important for me, that you know that I don't talk about gender when I talk about Venus or she or her. So Venus energy is everywhere and in every soul in cosmos and psyche. Arising from the center is Venus Aphrodite, core essence of the feminine nature in her manifest form. Through her powers of divine beauty and magnetic desirability as love, she awakens the impulse to life. That's a quote by Dimitra George. So just a little introduction into the Venus topics. So in evolutionary astrology, we differentiate between the inner side of Venus, which correlates to Taurus, and the outer side of Venus, which correlates to Libra. So on the one hand, we have the self relationship. It's all about listening to ourselves. Venus' inner side is about our senses, sensuality, feelings, feeling body, heart chakra, self-intimacy, our physical needs and survival, but not only about survival, but also about a good life, about wellness, pleasure, joy. And with the inner side of Venus, we connect to the resources within ourselves. So self-worth, we develop self-worth, self-trust, self-love, self-reliance. And the inner side of Venus stands also for our values, spiritual but material as well. And it's about receiving and magnetism. The outer side of Venus, which correlates to Libra, is, on the other hand, the relationships that we have to others. It's all about listening to others. So this includes friendships, partnerships, sexual and intimate relationships, but also our relationships to external resources, such as money or material goods. And this outer side of Venus has a great emphasis on empathy, compassion, the balance between the me and the we, giving and receiving, harmony, beauty, justice, peace, and it's a principle of inclusion. So Venus mirrors and embraces the beautiful unity between inside and outside, self-relationship, and the relationship to others. What are some shadow qualities? Hedonism. So this is the over-identification with everything and everybody that makes us feel good. This can be relationships, but also material goods. The projection of our own needs and desires onto others. We all know this phrase, I'm happy when you are happy. Another shadow quality of Venus is the imbalance between giving and receiving. So overgiving or being not, when you cannot receive. And often because of a lack of self-worth, we tend to people please or to be jealous. And in the social media world, destructive self-comparison is a very huge Venus shadow, I think, too. And arrogance and narcissism, often as a way to cope with the lack of self-worth, are some shadow qualities too. So I love this quote by Ren Butler. Impulses, it's about Venus, of course. Impulses towards love and friendship, harmony and pleasure, grace and beauty, forces of attraction, social pretensions and shallowness, vanity and conceit, self-indulgent and laziness, cravings for sugar as a substitute for love. So when we look at the Venus cycle, I think it is very important that we have a look on the difference between Venus and the moon, because we all know the moon cycle, we all, or many of us, sync with the moon cycle, so the new moon and the full moon. But what is actually the difference between the Venus cycle and the moon cycle? Of course, the Venus cycle lasts longer. Venus cycle is 19 months. But it's also important that we recognize the difference between feelings and emotions. So Jeffrey Wolf Green said, the moon connects to emotional reality. Feelings are a Venus function. They are the immediate reaction to existing stimulus. Emotions are a reaction to our feelings. So with Venus, we connect to our feelings, body sensations, heart and gut feeling, our body and heart wisdom. And these are direct and conscious, free from imprints, conditionings, judgment, and stories. And when we connect with the moon, we connect with our emotions. And these are the reactions to our feelings. They are often unconscious or subconscious, and they are often reflections of imprints and conditionings, judgments and stories that we connect to certain feelings. So in summary, when we sync with the Venus cycle in contrast to the moon cycle, we get in contact with our heart wisdom and natural feelings that are free from imprints and conditionings. What is actually the Venus cycle? Just very simple and basic. The Venus cycle describes Venus' path around the sun observed from the Earth. Hence, the Venus cycle is the dance and the relationship between Venus and the sun. And Adam Gainsbourg talks about the archetype of the solar feminine, which I find really, really wonderful, such as the light body, the light of love, the pleasure of creating, the shining from within. What are the potentials of the Venus cycle? We can develop self-worth, self-trust, self-reliance, and self-confidence. We become self-responsible for our own needs. We can connect with our body, heart, and body wisdom. We find balance between giving and receiving outside and inside. We co-create a loving and empathic society and community. We create relationships based on respect, compassion, and equality. And we explore sensitivity and empathy as strength and source of wisdom. But before we go to the Venus phases and their meaning, I want to tell you the myth of Inanna, because the Inanna myth is a beautiful reflection. It's like the mythological explanation of Venus' different phases as Morningstar, her descent and her disappearance from the heaven, and her evening star phase. So Inanna is a Sumerian goddess and a primal version of Venus and Aphrodite. And I will tell you the story, and you can just, maybe if you want to close your eyes or you want to just listen and watch at the picture. So there are many, many versions of the myth with many different side stories, and I try to keep it short and sweet and focus on the most important facts. In ancient times, Enki, the god of wisdom, gave Inanna great power so that she ruled as queen of the heaven. But Inanna had a sister, Ereshkigal, and she was queen of the underworld. And I think she can be seen as the representation of Inanna's own dark side. So after the death of Ereshkigal's husband, Inanna wanted to visit her dark sister. But I think that Inanna not only wanted to visit her sister because of the funeral, but because she was actually curious to see the underworld and to meet her own dark side. Inanna knew that it would be dangerous to go to the underworld, so she told her servants that they should look after her when she would not come back after 3 days. So now Inanna begins her journey into the underworld, and this is the start of the Morningstar Phase. So the Queen of Heaven starts her descent. And Inanna begins her journey well-dressed in her best clothes, her armor and jewelry. And on her descent, she has to pass 7 gates. And these 7 gates are actually the mythological version or the mythological explanation of the Venus gates. I will talk about that later. These are the monthly Moon-Venus conjunctions. And when Inanna arrived at the first gate, the gatekeeper told her that she has to take off her crown if she wants to continue her journey. And of course, brave and proud Inanna, first of all, refused to take off her crown. But yes, the gatekeeper said, okay, if you want to go, you have to take it off. So, okay, she laid down her crown. And gate by gate, Inanna had to take off all of her clothes, her jewelry and power symbols, like her armor, her ring of power, and so on. And these 7 gates correlate with the 7 chakras, which are activated during the Morningstar phase from the crown chakra to the root chakra. And after the 7th gate, Inanna arrived in the underworld. And this is the moment when the underworld and immersion and transmutation phase starts, when Venus disappears behind the sun. We will talk about that later. So at that time, Inanna is now completely naked and vulnerable. And in front of her sister, she falls on her knees. But Ereshkigal knows no mercy and kills her sister Inanna. So Inanna's dead body is hanged up in the underworld. And of course, after 3 days, Inanna's servants are worried about Inanna and ask the god of wisdom, Enki, for help. Enki gives them the water of life and helps them with a trick to descend into the underworld. And in the underworld, the servants find Ereshkigal, the dark sister, who is experiencing the pains of labor. So the servants show Ereshkigal their empathy and compassion, and therefore Ereshkigal is so grateful that she offers the servants whatever gift they ask for. And of course, they ask for the death body of Inanna. Because they have the water of life, the servants can revive Inanna from death, and she rises. And Inanna is finally reborn and she resurrects. And this is the moment of the superior conjunction, this rebirth. And together with her servants, Inanna starts now her ascent from the underworld to the heaven, and now the evening star begins. So Inanna is now queen of earth because she was in the underworld and heaven. And on her way up from the underworld, she passes again the 7 gates and puts on all of her clothes, jewelry, armor, and at the last gate, the crown. And so we have again the 7 Venus gates, and now the chakras are activated again, but now from the root to the top to the crown chakra. When Inanna arrives at her heavenly home, the story is not yet over, because she notices that her lover did not grieve about her death and betrayed her during she was killed in the underworld. Inanna is disillusioned, but she now knows what is really true and valuable for her. She feels her power, independence, and strength, and sends her lover into the underworld. So a little interpretation. This story is a heroine's journey in contrast to the hero's journey. So Inanna's journey is underneath the surface. So she lets go of all external roles and her power. She becomes naked and returns to her true essence. She meets her shadows. And then she rises as a more truthful version of herself. So we have these phases of descent, death and rebirth, and ascent. And we can describe it in a way that the feminine self travels inside and below into the earth and the body. On the other hand, we have the hero's journey, and this is a journey out into the world. It's a separation. The hero goes away from home, from source, from its origins. The hero meets challenges within the world. He meets external mentors, and we can compare it with the Mars cycle. So Venus' journey is the return to our origin, our roots, the divine within, and therefore a reunion with source, love, God, and goddess. A very simple division of the Venus phases, to give you a quick overview, is first of all, we have the retrograde phase, which is a kind of a reset. Then we have the Morningstar phase, which correlates to Inanna's descent. The underworld phase, where the superior conjunction happens, and then the evening star phase, Inanna's ascent. And I created a little graphic to show you how that goes. So we are here, the Earth, and the Venus cycle starts during the retrograde phase, when Venus is closest to Earth. So Venus is here, and here's the sun, and here's the Earth. So she is closest to Earth, and here's the inferior conjunction. And then the Morningstar phase begins. It lasts 8 to 9 months. Here are the Venus gates with the moon. And then Venus becomes invisible for 60 till 98 days, because she's then invisible from the Earth because she's behind the sun. She's furthest away from Earth during her underworld phase. Here is the superior conjunction, which marks the halfway point of the cycle. And then she appears again, but now as evening star. And then she travels back all the way as evening star, comes closer to Earth, has her Venus gates with the waxing moon. Then she turns retrograde again, becomes invisible, and then a whole new cycle starts. How we relate to and feel about ourselves generates an inner vibration or magnetism which attracts others who reflect or symbolize our self-relationship. Jeffrey Wolf Green. That brings us to the retrograde phase, which is a reset. It lasts 40 days. Venus is retrograde for 40 days. She's close to Earth and she disappears from the heaven for approximately 10 days in the heart of the sun. So Venus is first evening star, moves closer to Earth. The new cycle starts with the inferior conjunction, the halfway point of the retrograde phase. And at this moment, as we saw in the graphic, Venus is now closest to Earth and between Earth and Sun. And afterwards, Venus separates from Earth as morning star. What are the topics? It's a phase of radical interiority and deep self-reflection. So I think the inner side of Venus is very much activated at this time. So we listen within, we connect to heart and feelings, we deepen our self-relationship and self-care. We can develop self-responsibility for our own needs. And it's a time of reflection, of course. We reflect about relationship patterns, our values, our self-worth, and maybe detach from unhealthy relationships. We increase the awareness from which circumstances and persons we are dependent to feel worthy, safe, and good. And sometimes Venus retrograde classic, that people or relationships or the famous ex from the past appears. And this is always an opportunity for us to process unresolved conflicts and to clear relationship karma. So what is the potential of this phase? The redefinition and re-evaluation of our values, the restructuring of our relationships. And here, please, relationship not only to people, but also to our work and projects, especially with Venus and Capricorn, as you will see. And we can discover joy and beauty within ourselves, and we can celebrate the retrograde phase as a ceremony to cultivate our self-love. We can strengthen self-worth and self-love independent from external validation and approval. And of course, it's a preparation ground or a phase of preparation to ground the new cycle, the new 90 months Venus cycle. Question that we can ask ourselves is, what conditions and relationships do I need to feel worthy, secure, and loved? What and who is really important and precious for me? During the phase, we have deep lights. First of all, the evening heliacal setting. That is when Venus is already retrograde, but now disappears from the western horizon into the heart of the sun. And at that time, the introspection is often intensified. Then we have actually the inferior conjunction. That is the Venus-Sun conjunction, the Venus star point. And this marks the start of the whole Venus cycle. And this is the moment when Venus is now closest to Earth and between the Earth and the sun. And it's always, a moment or a day of initiation, a seeding. It's all about openness, receiving. Venus is infused with the sunlight, so it's all about listening. And we can listen to our heart instead of our head. How do I want to relate to myself and others? What do I want to give more space in my heart and life? And then after around approximately 10 days, Venus appears now as morning star on the eastern horizon. She's no longer invisible, but she's still retrograde. And this is often like a slow awakening. The divine feminine is love in action. That brings us to the Morningstar Phase. The Morningstar Phase is all about individuation. Venus moves now direct, and she moves as queen of the heaven away from the earth. So Venus is visible as morning star on the eastern horizon before sunrise, and she meets the waning moon to the monthly Venus gates. And in the Inanna myth, it's the brave descent of Inanna into the underworld. What are the topics? We focus more on personal goals, so we act in alignment to our own intentions and desires. We have reflected about them during the Venus retrograde phase. Now it's time to act and to move. It's a time to initiate new relationships, new projects, and so on. And it's often a time that we develop independence and personal sovereignty. We listen to our own intuition, body wisdom, and needs. And it's a time to try new ways, not only of relating, but new ways of living, of loving, of acting. And of course, we make mistakes. And challenges regarding our own goals can emerge. I feel that this time relates a little bit to it has an Aries vibe. In a way, it's more young oriented, and it's more about the action that we take. And a question that we can ask ourselves is, do I allow myself to say no to others and yes to myself? And at the moment that I give this presentation, Venus is actually a morning star. It's the beginning of her Morningstar phase, and she's with Mars too. We will talk about that later. But I feel it and I see it that there is now, after the retrograde, this urge to put the thing into motion. And that can feel overwhelming too. So it's the thing of try and error. We do not know exactly how everything is working, if it is working. So during this phase, we have highlights. At the beginning of the Venus Morningstar phase, we have her maximum morning brilliance. This is the time when Morningstar Venus reaches her biggest brightness. It was actually 1 week ago, so it was already in this phase now. And it's often a time when we have the need to desire to shine and be seen. It's all about visibility. And another important point is the maximum morning elongation. So this is at the beginning of the Morningstar phase 2. And at that time, Morningstar Venus is furthest away from the rising sun. And at that time, it's often that a direction change can appear, or that we make important decisions. And during the whole Morningstar phase, we have 7 to 8 Venus gates. So these are the monthly conjunctions of Venus with the waning moon. During the Morningstar phase, she meets the waning moon. During the evening star phase, she meets the waxing moon. And every Venus gate is like an initiation of a new Venus month. It's wonderful to do some rituals around that date. And it's more about listening and receiving instead of logical or heady manifestation work as we know it sometimes with the new moon. So it's more about being open, opening our heart. And during the Venus gates, the 7 chakras are activated, like in the Inanna myth. So during the Morningstar phase, we go from the crown chakra to the root chakra. Surrender all that is no longer true about yourself so that you can discover what is eternal and can never be lost. That brings us into the underworld, the transmutation. It lasts 60 till 98 days. So Venus is direct and 60 till 98 days invisible and far away from Earth. So at the beginning, she moves as invisible morning star away from Earth. Then at the superior conjunction, Venus is furthest away from the Earth and behind the sun. This is the transmutation from morning to evening star. And then Venus moves as invisible evening star towards the Earth. And in the Inanna myth, it's the death and rebirth in the underworld. So what are the topics? Of course, we are in the underworld. That means below the ground and within the body. It's a time where we look beneath the surface, let go of illusions. Sometimes we can be confronted with our own Venus shadows. I experienced that during the last Venus underworld phase last summer. So challenges around self-worth, insecurity, jealousy, self-comparison can arise. And because Venus is so far away from Earth, there can be this feeling of isolation, alienation, loneliness, maybe kind of a loss or death, separation within relationships or in relation to projects or our own goals. But it's also a time where all this transmutation and inner alchemy happens, because when we go so deep, we become really aware of our own essence, and we can develop radical self-awareness, self-honesty, self-trust, and self-worth. So I think important during this phase actually is really to cultivate and to take time to cultivate heart connection and have and self-care. So I think that it's maybe helpful to connect with the higher octave of Venus, Neptune during these phase. So the connection to spirit, the divine, and source. A question that we can ask is, can I see myself through loving eyes with my shadow and light? The deep lights are the start of the underworld phase when Morningstar Venus disappears behind the sun. And that is the time when the withdrawal starts. And then we have the superior conjunction. So this is the Venus-Sun conjunction and the Cazimi behind the sun. And as I said, Venus is furthest away from the Earth, and it's the halfway point of the cycle. The moment of transmutation, resurrection, and rebirth. And we are getting ready to show up in our wholeness with shadow and light. And the evening heliacal rise marks the end of the underworld phase. Venus is now visible as evening star, and she moves towards the Earth. Together with Venus, we go deep and within our body and heart so that we can afterwards rise, bring our truth and wisdom upwards to the light, and finally share it with the world. So now the evening star phase, it's about integration and sharing. It's again 8 till 9 months, and Venus is now direct, and she moves as Queen of Heaven and Earth towards the Earth. Evening star Venus is visible on the western horizon, and now she meets the waxing moon to the monthly Venus gates. And this is when Inanna arises and comes back and ascends from the underworld. The evening star phase, during the evening star phase, it's often that we develop self-confidence and inner security within relationships. So a natural selection can be made. We focus more on quality instead of quantity, and we have the desire to share our self-recognition and experiences. We focus on the we and the us and have the desire to be in service. So that's a time when we learn where and how we can serve and support others, and we find a balance between service and self-care, giving and receiving. And especially at the end of this phase, before the next retrograde takes place, it's a kind of an activation of the inner wise woman or the crown archetype. Question that we can ask ourselves during this phase are, how can I serve others by sharing my authentic gifts and wisdom? How can I relate and care for others without neglecting my own needs? Highlights are again the Venus gates. Venus now meets the waxing moon. These are all initiation of a new Venus month. And now the 7 chakras are activated from the root to the crown. And then we have the maximum evening elongation and the maximum evening brilliance, and both happen at the end of the evening star phase. And the maximum evening elongation is the time when evening star Venus is furthest away from the setting sun. And this marks often a new change of direction. So it's right before the retrograde. So it's a slowing down and going within a time of harvest, a time of completion. And the maximum evening brilliance is often very, very short, just a week or so before she turns retrograde. And then she reaches her biggest brightness as evening star. And this can be a time when we see ourselves in a new light and we experience validation from within. So just some words to the 5-pointed star and the Venus rose. And Ariel Goodman has, I think, more than one amazing presentations about the 5-pointed star and the Venus star point. So please, I highly recommend to watch them because I want to focus a little bit more about the Venus and Capricorn themes. I just want to have a quick overview about the 5-pointed star and this rose pattern. The Venus star point is the inferior conjunction between Venus and the Sun, and it happens every 8 years at approximately the same degree within the same sign. So, and because Venus has its inferior conjunction every 19 months, this 5-pointed star is built. So what is important for us now is to know when Venus had her last inferior conjunction in Capricorn, because we are now in a Venus and Capricorn cycle. So it can be very interesting for you when you listen and watch to have a look what happened in January 2014, because at that time Venus had her last inferior conjunction in Capricorn at 21 degrees. So let's talk about the Venus cycle in Capricorn. The whole 90-month cycle is grounded in and conditioned by its initial intention set at the beginning of the cycle, Capricorn. So it's like when we have a new moon, the new moon sets the tune for the whole month. And so the inferior conjunction sets the vibe for the whole Venus cycle. And I think it's so interesting that the Capricorn cycle comes behind the Gemini cycle. So because the last Venus cycle was in Gemini in 2020, 2021. And I have this feeling that we now can filter our learnings from the last Venus cycle in Gemini through our heart and bring them now into form during the Venus cycle in Capricorn. Venus in Capricorn reflects our relationship to our body, physical reality, earth, society, rules, authorities, security, conditionings, expectations, judgment, work, discipline, success, time, karma, our past and ancestry. What is the evolutionary intent? I think it's all about the preservation of earth, body, and resources. It's about the development of self-responsibility, self-authority, and inner security. It's a deconditioning. It's about integrity and natural law, the development of a loving discipline, heart-centered goals, and the exploration of wisdom from the past and time as cyclic. Venus in Capricorn teaches us to decondition from the belief that our value, joy, and inner peace is dependent on external validation, status, success, or any other external factor. I want to talk a little bit about Capricorn and relationships. So Capricorn, as we all know, stands for our role within the society. And every society has its unique rules that actually structure the life together. And these rules are dependent on the time, on the culture we are living in. So the family on the picture, they experience very different rules than we experience it now. So hence the soul is confronted with the expectation to fit in and the judgment when the soul does not fit in. And therefore, the soul internalizes the rules, quote unquote, and judgments of its family, society, and surrounding. Sigmund Freud called this the superego. So these inner and outer judgments lead to the feelings of guilt and shame. And it's very important that we differentiate within the Capricorn archetype between man-made law and conditioned guilt versus natural law and natural guilt. And when the rules and structures are limiting the personal and collective evolution, deconditioning and restructuring is inevitable. I think it's very important to remind ourselves that Capricorn and the Saturn archetype stands for the conditionings that we learn from our environment and society, but Capricorn does not equal patriarchy. So because we live in a patriarchal meritocracy, we experience Capricorn in a very biased way. So for example, humans as working machines. Yes, Capricorn definitely stands for ambition and discipline because we want to use our limited lifetime that we become aware of in Capricorn in a constructive way. But Capricorn also stands for natural cycles of rest and activity and sustainability. And we should not forget that Capricorn is a yin energy and an earth sign. So the teachings and evolutionary intent of Venus in Capricorn. One big topic is body and earth. So Capricorn, as I mentioned, is an earth and yin sign. So that means structures, earth, are in connection to our feelings within the Capricorn archetype. And we have the picture of Capricorn as the sea goat, like in the Babylonian and Greek myth. So we have here again this connection between the sea and water, our emotions, and the goat, so mountains, earth, and the physical world. So therefore, Capricorn teaches the preservation of Mother Earth, resources, our body and nature. And with Venus in Capricorn, we can learn to live, work, consume, love, and enjoy in a sustainable way. We can learn that sacred rest is the precondition for productivity. And we can discover the body as source for wisdom. And I think one big topic could be on a personal but also collective level, this this split between feeling versus functioning and preservation versus fixation or hardening or clinging to things. Another big topic with Venus and Capricorn within this cycle are, I think, role models and deconditioning. So especially during the retrograde phase, of course, but I think it will be a topic for the whole cycle. We become aware of learned and repeated relationship patterns. So this can be the relationship between our caregivers or the relationships that we ourselves have or had to father or mother figures. And I think we can decondition from traditional gender roles and traditional relationship concepts so that we explore more the idea of a gender spectrum instead of this idea of duality between male and female. And we can become aware of self-expectations and self-convictions. We can process conditioned shame and guilt, and we can decondition from unnatural structures. So the circle is actually natural and the hierarchy is not. So I'm a bit excited how this will play out on a personal and collective level in the next months. So self-responsibility and self-authority are big Venus and Capricorn lessons too. I think Venus and Capricorn is so much about integrity. So that means to live in alignment with our own values. And it's about soul sovereignty and body sovereignty. And these topics are already very active in our society at the moment. We can emotionally mature, so we become self-responsible for our needs and emotions instead of projecting them onto others. We can create healthy structures in relationships that can mean more boundaries or more openness, and stability and reliability within relationships. We can focus on quality instead of quantity in regards to relationships, but also material goods and our work. And we can cultivate self-worth independent from success, performance culture, and so on. I really like the word loving discipline with Venus and Capricorn. I think it's really important that we focus on that. So as I mentioned, we can manifest our learnings from the Venus and Gemini cycle now with Venus and Capricorn, and we can develop ambition and perseverance regarding to goals that are in alignment with our values, our own goals, not the goals of society, not the goals of our friends or family, or yeah. So it's all about hard work instead of hard work. And I think that Venus and Capricorn is about holistic self-discipline as well. So a self-discipline that includes how we are in connection with our body and our physical needs. So like healthy rituals, etc. And we can establish new working structures, or in general structures that allow more flow and ease and beauty and harmony. And of course, Venus in Capricorn knows that relationships sometimes are hard work or hard work, and that we can invest in interpersonal relationships, or that it is important to invest in interpersonal relationships. Another topic is time and the past. So we can discover time as cyclic instead of time as a tool for oppression within a patriarchal society. I really like this idea. It's from ancient Greek society, Chronos versus Kairos. So Chronos as this linear time, which is often that we have to function like a machine, and the Kairos time, which is more the quality lifetime. So what is really important and valuable. And I think this is a huge topic, especially with Saturn squaring the lunar nodes. I think around, almost the whole year. And we can connect to our maternal ancestral lineage, our homeland and Mother Earth with Venus and Capricorn. We can rediscover primal rites and rituals. And I hope, that we can experience the revival of the crone archetype. We can find a new relationship to grief and death. I think that is very important, that we create spaces to process grief. And this could be enhanced by the South Node in Scorpio. And with Venus and Capricorn, we can find wisdom in the personal past or the past in general. So now we will talk about Venus and Pluto, the power of love versus the love of power. Why is it important to look at that? I think it is important because Venus is the ruling planet of the North Node in Taurus, and Pluto is, of course, the ruling planet of the South Node in Scorpio. And their conjunctions at the beginning of the new Venus cycle and during the lunar node shifts emphasize the significance of their energies in the next 1.5 years. And the exact Venus-Pluto conjunctions, 2 have been in December, but one is now in March, on the 3rd of March at 27 degrees 51. And when we use a 10-degree orb, Venus and Pluto's energy is noticeable until March 15th. What are some topics with Venus and Pluto? Passion and creativity versus fixation and obsession. The evolution of relationship versus power battles, manipulations, betrayal. The awareness of emotional entanglement versus the obsession with everything and everyone that makes us feel good. So this picture of the golden handcuffs. The awareness of subconscious fears around self-worth, inner security, all the Venus topics, sexuality, desire, money, versus the projection of our fears onto others. We can develop radical self-honesty and self-acceptance, and it can be a process of purging, deep healing, and the integration of shadow material. And of course, we have this beautiful but very intense connection between soul, Pluto, and heart, Venus. And Ari said in one of his talks about Venus and Pluto, giving from our soul's authority. So we can ask ourselves, what chains do I have to cut so that I can call my energy back to myself? But Venus is not only meeting with Pluto, but she has also dates or is traveling together with Mars. Love in action or the love to fight. Venus and Mars will travel together through Capricorn and Aquarius, and Venus and Mars journey together after the Venus retrograde phase can be a very important time to put our retrograde reflections into actions, to prepare the ground for the upcoming Mars retrograde phase in autumn and winter, and of course to balance Venus, ruler of the North Node, with Mars, which is the lower octave of Pluto, ruler of the South Node, and the traditional ruler of the South Node too. But in evolutionary astrology, we do not talk about that. So the exact Venus-Mars conjunctions are, one has been in February 16th. So when I give this talk, this was yesterday. So they met in Capricorn together with Vesta. I will talk about that later. And one conjunction, the last one will be on March 16th, on March 6th, sorry, at 0 degree Aquarius. And then I looked it up and I was really amazed. They will again meet in February 2024. So yeah, I hope that AstroGold gave me the correct date. But Venus and Mars are, I mean, these are the exact conjunctions, the exact kisses or hits or dates, but they will travel together, and their energy is noticeable until April 16th, when we use a 10 degree orb. So within this time frame, they are within a 10 degree orb together. What is the potential with Venus and Mars in Capricorn? I think it's all about heart-aligned action, and we can act in alignment with our values, long-term goals, self-authority, and integrity. And they are in conjunction with Vesta in February. And I think it's all about devotion and really this need for temple time. So at the moment, not only Venus and Mars are together, but all planets are direct. So I think Venus really Vesta really reminds us that we have to withdraw to find clarity on a regular basis and take some temple time. And I think the potential of these threesome of Venus, Mars, and Vesta is really that we can create sustainability and realize our long-term goals instead of focus on instant gratification and the thrill to kill. So Venus and Mars are, of course, about eros, passionate life force, creativity, and I think it can be a very potent and fruitful energy. I already noticed that in my own life and in the life of my clients. But it's also very important that we really find a balance between receiving and giving, rest and activity, yin and yang. And I find it so interesting that when we follow Venus and Mars, they change between new and balsamic phases. And I actually reread the passages in the Pluto 2 book about the different Venus and Mars phases. And on the one hand, we have this balsamic phase between Venus and Mars, which is about letting go of old ways how we relate, and the culmination and completion of maybe unfinished relationship business. And on the other hand, we have this new phase, this initiation of new relationships, of new ways to relate to ourselves, to other people, and our work. One thing is pretty important, the conjunction of Venus and Mars to Pluto, which happens in a trine to the North Node in Taurus. And this will be between February 28th till March 3rd. And I think because now it is the third conjunction from Venus with Pluto, and now she is together with Mars and in a positive, in a harmonious trine to the North Node, it can be that we now really have the courage to cut the cords, because we now feel on a deeper level that our worth and security is independent from external factors. So that we now, after the retrograde, after the 2 conjunctions with Pluto, now we are really brave enough to individuate from emotional bonds and power gains. But within this transformation, it is really important to find stability within the transformation, and so that we can, I think the Taurus North Node is so much about a slow but steady evolution, especially with a trine to Pluto, so that we can create a life that allows us stability, peace, and grace. Venus and Mars will be together in Aquarius in March. So they have their exact conjunction on 0 degree Aquarius, and then we'll travel through Aquarius together. And I think after we have done this Capricornian deconditioning, now we are more open to new ways of relating. So it's about magnetizing people and circumstances that are Aquarius in tune with our natural frequency and our true self. So maybe we can really emphasize to look for our soul family and to be open to meet like-minded people. And they will have between March 19th till April 5th, they will have together a conjunction to Saturn. And at that time, of course, the Uranus square is also highlighted. And yeah, it will be in the future, so I'm excited about that. But I can imagine that we maybe experience limitations that stop us from hasty actions, so that we can develop a loving discipline and maybe creativity that arises within these limitations. There's also the potential that we can create new structures, Saturn, that allow us freedom and independence. So the Aquarius vibe. And I think there is a bit of a expansion, Aquarius and Uranus versus tension, Saturn. And because we are talking about Aquarius and Uranus, I think it is very important that we focus on our body, that we work with our body and our nervous system, and maybe do grounding practices or really center ourselves within, connect with nature, etc., to really don't get overwhelmed by all these Venus, Mars, Eros, and the Saturn tension that could arise. One of the final points I want to talk about is the superior conjunction of Venus and Mars, of the Venus cycle. So the superior conjunction, as you remember, is during the underworld phase, and Venus will be in Libra at that time during this upcoming cycle or during the current cycle. And it is on October 22nd at 29 degree 26 minutes Libra. And it's in the last quarter square to Pluto and Capricorn. So we have a highlight on the natural square between Capricorn and Libra, not only because it's a Venus cycle in Capricorn and the superior conjunction is in Libra, but also because Pluto is showing up again. So a very Plutonian Venus cycle, I think. Challenges and evolutionary intent. I think it can be a time that we become aware again of codependencies within relationships, where we do not take the responsibility for our own feelings and needs, but project them onto others. So taking the responsibility is the intention with Venus and Capricorn. Project them onto others is, can be a shadow in Libra. We can gain clarity where we suppress our feelings and needs, Capricorn, to feel loved, so that we withdraw and reconnect with our own values and self-worth. So that is very underground phase-like. We could be confronted with inner and outer extremes and imbalances between yin and yang, Libra shadow, in order to find more balance. We could be confronted with destructive self-comparison to others, Libra, and that's again to really become aware that we become aware of our own self-worth, which is independent from others. We can create more balance and equality within our relationships so that we find our own authority, but now within relationships. And we can experience the importance of relationships based on integrity and shared values, instead of climbing our Capricorn mountain alone. And I think that could be a big topic, because especially during the underworld phase, because Venus is so far away from Earth, there can arise these feelings of isolation. So it can be actually a time where we remember that we need our friends and our connections to others. So here I just have the graphic from the start with the dates. So if you want to, feel free to screenshot it. I really hope that I have the correct dates, because I'm in Germany. I had it at the beginning with the German dates. I looked it up, but maybe at some points there's one day difference. So we see the start at the inferior conjunction in Capricorn, then the Morningstar phase lasts until September, the 7 Venus gates. Then the underworld phase starts at the beginning of September and lasts until December. And then the evening star phase begins in December and ends in July. And then Venus stations retrograde again on 22nd July 2023. And then the next cycle starts, and it will be a cycle in Leo. And that is really interesting, but I had not enough time to talk about the relationship between Capricorn and Leo. But I think it will be very interesting to see that. Just a little, some little tips by myself. How can we actually connect and sync with Venus? This is a picture of my own Venus altar. So I think that it's really nice, and it's really good, especially when we are when we like to have something that we see. It's really nice to have a little Venus altar, maybe with fresh flowers, candles, a bowl with water, a painting or a statue, a rose quartz. We can connect with Venus through ceremony and rituals. I would recommend the Venus gates, that you take the Venus gates and celebrate them like a new moon, that you do a little ritual, do a meditation, be open, receive. And important points of the cycle, such as the inferior conjunction or the superior conjunction. Of course, we can connect with Venus through meditation and prayer. We can really ask Venus for guidance and then listen within. And I'm pretty sure that she will talk to you. And it's really nice, I think, when we are really in devotion to Venus, so that we do not only ask Venus for help, but that we ask Venus how we can honor her within ourselves. Another way to relate with Venus, especially during the phases when she's actually visible, so now she's visible, is sky gazing. And go outside, look at the sky. Now she's a morning star. There are different apps that help you to locate Venus so that you know where Venus is. And roses. Roses, not only as flowers, but as oil, as tea, as burn incense. Yes, all beautiful ways to bring this Venus energy, this omnipresent archetype, this quality into our life, and to really connect with that in a very active way. And I think that is so beautiful that astrology can give us this awareness of these qualities so that we really can see them and really can play and with Venus and Capricorn work with them and create a more Venus-like life. So to end this talk, a quote by Richard Charnas: Venus, the principle of desire, love, beauty, value, the impulse and capacity to attract and be attracted, to love and be loved, to seek and create beauty and harmony, to engage in social and romantic relations, sensuous pleasure, artistic and aesthetic experience, the principle of eros and the beautiful, Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. So thank you, EA Zoom meetings. It was such an honor for me to speak. And yeah, here are my contacts. So I'm on Instagram. You can contact me via mail. You can contact me via my homepage. Because it's all in German, maybe the best way to contact me is via mail or via Instagram. And I have a podcast in German language. I have a newsletter. When you speak German, you're very welcome to contact me and to join my offerings. And thank you for listening. And I don't know if you have time for questions, or if there are questions, let me know about that.
Thank
I
you
know it was
so much, Verena. That was such a beautiful and comprehensive presentation. It was just wonderful. Yes, I very much enjoyed it. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
It was much. I tried to put it all in one presentation.
So here's a comment from Jonathan. Wow, so blown away by the quality content you shared with us here. I learned so much about the Venus cycle.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan.
I think he echoes all of us. That it was just awesome.
Oh, thank you so much.
I love the way you put it together at the end with the meditations and rituals to align yourself with the cycle.
Yeah, that's so important, I think, because it's always, sometimes it's when we read astrology books and when we learn about astrology, it's sometimes a little bit theoretic. And I think it's so important that we really live an astrological life. And that is something that one of my teachers, Sabrina Monarch, is all about too. So really, work with the archetypes and really engage with the archetypes, and especially with Venus and the Asteroid goddesses. It's so easy to connect with them when we really have the intention to give them space and to really evoke them and to really call them within our prayer or meditation, and they come. So I sometimes have the feeling that I'm surrounded by a green light, for example, with Venus. And yeah, I think when we open up and we set the intention, we can interact with all of the archetypes and planets. Jupiter is really good to connect to too. So he loves to connect with us, I think.
Awesome. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions or comments. So again, thank you so much. It was
Yes, thank you so much.
beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.